We do this for a lot of different games because I think it's important for our audience specifically. You can get the headline takes anywhere, dude. I'm not calling out different networks or broadcast crews or whatever, but there's a lot of people saying the flyover stuff, saying the boilerplate stuff. What we're trying to do is, yes, we want to address those. We want to speak to the obvious here, but we also want to take it a step further and talk about what's being missed, what's not being said in relation to Georgia and Ole Miss in this quite frankly, it's going to be a blockbuster game. It's a revenge game here for Georgia, which is being talked about a lot. People are also talking a lot about Gunnar Stockton and how he's doing running the Georgia system and the way that he has done enough in Mike Bobo's offense to get Georgia where they're at right now. Y'all, as much as that's important, I don't think we're acknowledging nearly enough that Georgia's just going to line it up and run the freaking rock this weekend. They are. And I told you in our preview, some of this is just me accounting for the science of Georgia's offense and Ole Miss's defense. Ole Miss, they were great last year on the defensive line, running that three-down lineman scheme. Why? Because they had big Walter Nolan in the middle, had J.J. Pegues. You had a lot of big USDA-approved sirloin kind of bodies up front that you were able to have three-down linemen and then fly up with that second and third level of the defense and stop the run semi-effectively. Y'all, that's not this year for Ole Miss. Not saying it can't eventually evolve into that, but seeing what I've seen Georgia do to other defenses, the freaking take your heart out of your chest drive they had against Tennessee to open that second half, the way they ran the football against Alabama, that to me says everything I need to know about Georgia offensively going into this game. Gunnar Stockton, you can't give the game away. Game manager is such an ugly phrase when you talk about quarterbacks because it makes it sound like they're just out there riding shotgun. But, just make the throws, Gunnar Stockton. Be great on the ground, Gunnar Stockton. Be the emotional thermostat, Gunnar Stockton. But Georgia, they're going to turn around and hand the football to their backs consistently and make this thing a pound puppy kind of game with how they run the football. 55% run is how Georgia operates. I expect that number to hold, and I expect that to be Georgia's game plan in this spot. So Gunnar Stockton, big part of this game. There's no way to talk about a quarterback in an SEC game where he's not important, but it's about Georgia running the football. It's about the matchup they have on the line of scrimmage that I think will ultimately give them the advantage in this spot. Now, I say that, we account for that. I don't think we're accounting enough for how bad Georgia's secondary is. And the thing that's being missed with Ole Miss is Lane Kiffin, with a backup quarterback last year, put together a Mona Lisa of a drive. They had me believing big time in Austin Simmons. And who's to say Austin Simmons, if Trinidad Chambliss doesn't play how he plays when Austin Simmons gets a little bit hurt, doesn't still come into this game being touted the way he was touted at SEC Media Days as being quietly maybe one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. I digress. This over-under total for the game tells us everything that we need to know about what Ole Miss can be offensively. The total is 54.5. 54.5. Trinidad Chambliss has to be licking his chops looking at Georgia secondary. Georgia secondary gave up 371 against Tennessee, gave up 276 against Bama through the air. Not great. Not great. And so if I'm Trinidad Chambliss, I've gone for over 300 yards 3 of my last 4 outings. Surprisingly, Washington State was that one game he did not go for 300 yards. I'm saying, okay, listen, I know I played D2 a year ago, but if that's the Georgia secondary I'm looking at here, I don't see Keely Ringo out there. Right? I don't think we're going to have all that much trouble throwing the football downfield. So to put another point on that, Georgia has not been great getting after the quarterback this year. And even if they were, the Trinidad Chambliss mobility factor here would also be an answer to that. So my point in all this is I think Ole Miss, as much as I think Georgia's going to control this game and win this game, Ole Miss and what they could do making this thing interesting, if you push it into a situation, if you're Trinidad Chambliss, where Gunnar Stockton has to answer you and they have to start throwing the football more than they would like to, this thing gets weird. This thing gets very, very weird. So we're going to do our superlatives later in the show, and Georgia-Ole Miss won't be my things could get weird game. But I tell you what, it's on the podium. It is absolutely on the podium. Anytime Lane Kiffin is calling the game, him and Coach Weiss, the offensive masterminds there, I'm just saying I've seen Georgia start slow too many times, and I've seen Lane Kiffin dial up a winning game plan too many times to just turn a blind eye and say, Georgia -7, easy money. I wouldn't touch that number, quite frankly. The over, honestly, in this game is more intriguing to me. But with that being said, what's being missed, Georgia, Gunnar Stockton's a headline for sure. How they're going to run the football, though, that's the key to this game. And then Lane Kiffin and what he did with a backup quarterback last year in this game and how bad Georgia's secondary has been to this point and how awesome Trinidad Chambliss has been in this spot. Hold on tight. Hold on tight is all I can say. Those things are not being talked about nearly enough. Now we talked about them, so you can go tell your friends, hey, lock in a little bit here for this game. Here's the things you need to make sure you're taking advantage of if you're trying to bet it. Also important to take account for.